Welcome back. Today we're just going to cover the basics of biochemistry, or the basics of chemistry before we actually get into biochemistry. So chemistry is actually just the study of matter and how it changes based on its object or the environment. Now, some definitions that you should basically know are: matter is anything with mass that takes up space. They're usually made of atoms. Now, elements are pure substances that cannot be broken down into simpler substances. So if you actually look at the bottom of this slide, you'll see that that's the periodic table. And each square represents a specific element, and that specific element has a specific number of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Chemical symbol, which is just shorthand for all these chemicals. If you're looking at the periodic table, again, all of those letters represent a chemical symbol. An atom is the basic building block of all matter, smallest particle of an element having the same characteristics of that element. A molecule is the smallest unit of a compound, combination of atoms put together. A bond is a force that holds two atoms together as a single unit, and it contains energy. Now, it could either be a covalent bond or an ionic bond, just like we covered in the reading. And a chemical formula are chemical symbols showing the recipe for making a specific compound. Now, I'm going to jump into a brief review of pH. pH refers to how acidic or how basic a solution is. Solutions are rated on a pH scale from 0 to 14. From 0 to 7 is acidic. From 7 to 14 is basic, with 7 being neutral. Something that's neutral is water, and some acidic things, you can think of any citrus fruits or any soda drinks, versus something that's basic are your cleaning products, your Drano, your soaps that you use to wash your hands. Each step on the pH scale represents a tenfold change in the acidic or alkalinity, basicness of the object. Now, what I mean by tenfold, if you look at the example, a pH of 2 is 10 times more acidic than a pH of 3 because you're going lower. The most acidic is 0, so you're going lower. Versus, let's say I'm talking about a pH of 11, which is 10 times less basic than 12. So acids form hydrogen ions or H plus ions in water. Some good examples are lemons, tomatoes, citrus fruits. And typically in the past, they used to have to taste everything. Good thing for you, they did it in the past and you don't have to do that anymore. But acids are usually sour to the taste. Now on the flip side, bases form hydroxide or OH minus ions in water. Some examples are detergents or soaps, and if you're looking at the picture, you'll see that Drano, that stuff you use to unclog your clogged drains, and they were often bitter and slippery. So if you think about soap when you're washing your hands, it's very slippery. Now, why do we care about pH? All life functions actually have a certain perfect condition that needs to be held, and one of those conditions, aside from temperature and all the other stuff, is pH. Some plants can only grow in acidic soil, while other plants can grow in basic soils. But for humans, human blood always actually stays very close to 7. And if I was going to be really specific, it's 7.35 to 7.45 in pH. So our internal blood is slightly, and when I mean slightly, I mean like barely basic. Going a little bit further, organic chemicals versus inorganic chemicals. All living things are made of organic chemicals, and we need inorganic chemicals to survive. Now, what do I mean by organic? The only thing that classifies a chemical or a molecule as organic is the presence of both carbon and hydrogen. Okay, but there are also some important things that we need, like water, okay, oxygen. Those are all inorganic molecules, but we need them for life. Now, way back when in the 1953, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey actually tried to test out a theory of the origin of life. How did we get here? What did they do? They boiled water, methane gas, hydrogen, and ammonia in a sealed glass piece of glass bubble, kind of like what you see on the right-hand side of your screen. They fired some sparks to simulate lightning. Now, this whole entire apparatus and this whole condition was supposed to represent Earth before there was any life, before there was an atmosphere. It was very chaotic. There were high quantities of certain amounts of gas, high quantities of certain amount of chemicals found in the atmosphere, and it was very hostile, it was very crazy in the sense that there was a lot of storms, a lot of thunderstorms, lightning storms, and that would have been like that pulse of energy. So when they did this, they repeated this for a week, and they ended up finding out that there were 10 to 15% of the carbon found in those molecules, those original molecules, arranged themselves back into organic compounds such as carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and parts of DNA, which are actually the biomolecules that we need to survive, that living things have. So, just to reiterate, the basic biochemicals found in living organisms are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. If we had to break it down a little bit further, carbohydrates building blocks are monosaccharides or single sugars. You can even refer to them as simple sugars. The actual chemical makeup would be what you're looking at on the right-hand side, but I'm not going to test you on that. Lipids are composed of a glycerol and three fatty acids. The fatty acids are kind of like a chain. So if you're looking at the right-hand side of the screen, you see all those C's that have all the H's coming off. That's a chain. So you'd have three of those guys connected to one glycerol molecule, kind of a big molecule, but lipids have a lot of energy that's stored in them. Every chemical bond is technically stored energy, and when you break a bond, you're releasing that energy. We'll get into that when we get into cellular respiration and breaking down sugar molecules into usable energy such as ATP. Proteins, their building blocks are amino acids. So now you're going to see the introduction of nitrogen. I'll get into that in a couple lectures from here. But proteins are one of the most important things. You need to eat proteins to get those amino acids so your body can actually create enzymes to help break down other things and to use these proteins to build up your muscle if you tore it or did something to it. We use proteins to rebuild and repair. Nucleic acids are built from nucleotides. Nucleotides are four nitrogenous bases, but we will get into those much later in the year when we get to mitosis and genetics and um, DNA replication. So lastly, I'm going to leave you off. I want you to brainstorm. Name some examples of what you might know as of carbs, fats/lipids, and proteins. We're going to focus on these in the next lecture.